Okay, so you're welcome back and joining me in the studio today for AM Talk. I'm having two persons, as usual, like we always do. Now, I have a member of the New Patriotic Party, Eric Amwakochum. He happens to be the vice chairman of the NPP Trouble area. Well, one more come to the AM show.
Morning. Thank you.
Also joining us today is James Kobna Bomfe. You must have heard about him. You must have. You know, he's a man of many titles. He's held quite a number of positions. And well, I was ready to introduce him as a former national youth organizer of the Convention People's Party, but he tells me that one day is gone. Some 5 years ago, he dropped that title. So he's now the spokesperson on youth and sports for the Convention People's Party. He's also the director of elections for the party, a man of many titles. A warm welcome to the AM show.
Thank you.
Okay, so today is the 2nd day of January, and as usual, I want to do some talk. Let's get to find out things happening now, and let's start off with the fight against corruption. And maybe you could do a quick review of how the government handled corruption cases in 2014. Then we look at 2015, and there's a call. So maybe just as you do your quick retrospect of 2014 with issues relating to corruption and the fight against it, I'll quickly tie this one also in.
Okay, good morning. I think that the fact that it's the first working day of the year, I would want to extend a good morning to all the viewers, and then also wish them a happy new year. And hopefully this year, 2015, basically brings us all some kind of hope as we go forward as a country. In terms of corruption, you realize that in the last few months or so, almost every grouping has sort of seen that it's important that we start doing something about it and move away from the business as usual, whereby we keep talking about it but nothing really happens. Now, the government's own track record in dealing with corruption is there for everybody to see. I mean, there's a plethora of examples that we can come up with. You know, Subers and the jailers, and a classic example is what's happened with Woyomi, for instance, where there's actually a court order that the monies are meant to be retrieved, and even the government's own, initiative in terms of asking some service providers, when it came to JIDA and SADA, talk of Asuntaba and the Zoom Lion Group, for instance, to reimburse to the state coffers monies that were paid to them for jobs that were not done, has not actually materialized. So moving into a new year, I think it's important that we look at that, we bring that into perspective, to realize that as a country, with all the problems that we are facing, if we do not cure this canker of corruption, and it has to come from the top. I mean, the top leadership of government should basically take that initiative to deal with that problem. We will still be facing the problems that we face today, because I mean, we have dire problems with our economy, for instance, issues with our energy sector, and the wastages in the system, coupled with the corruption that we are facing today, means that no matter how hard we work, we will still be deviled by some of these problems. So, I mean, the importance of dealing with the corruption is basically, it cannot be underestimated. We need to basically get to the bottom of exactly why it is happening, and hold government more accountable for corruption in our society, because most of the things that are happening are coming from institutions that is actually governed or is superintended over by government, and then government's own actions. I mean, when you're talking about corruption, we are even talking about issues with the value for money audits for some of the projects that the government itself has undertaken, and then the government's own track record when it comes to reporting some of these issues. Typical example is what happened with the ghost names issues, and we found that the National Service Secretary, for instance, whereby we found 22,000 names, in excess of 22,000 names, ghost names, right? And then you find that the commitment is actually not there, because time in, time out. The government itself comes out with policies to make sure that we get out of this quagmire.
Is that indeed the case, that the commitment is not there? Because obviously I know if you make reference to the National Service Secretariat, for instance, the corruption issues that were brought up there, I know the government has put in quite a number of measures and the whole system has been changed to an extent just so we can curtail some of these things.
No, you see, for me, my problem is how it actually happens. Because, I mean, in this day and age, I mean, we've been talking about ghost names in our public sector wage bill for the last probably 20, 30 years. Right? And then we find ourselves in 2015, as we speak, when we have access, we have the benefit of all the technology that you can think of. And as we speak, we still have that particular problem. What it means is that there is some kind of complicity coming from top public officials and even the government as we speak. Because, I mean, does it really not surprise you that as we speak, you can actually keep on paying people who are working in the public sector and they don't have designated bank accounts, for instance? I mean, how do you track some of these things? You understand? So it's not enough to say, well, we've identified ghost names. But then the point is that how do you actually prevent that from happening? And there's a plethora of other examples when it comes to corruption whereby you realize that the government's own, I mean, typical example, I always go back to Wyoming, for instance, because the government actually came out to state categorically that monies were paid to Wyoming wrongly. Wyoming basically got access to that particular money in a dubious manner, right? And then the case was actually taken to court. The court presided over the case, and then it came out that Wyoming was meant to retrieve, government was meant to retrieve money from Wyoming. As we speak today, we don't know what's happened to that. I made another example of the monies that were meant to be retrieved from Asuntaba and then Zoom Line, for instance, in respect to Jida and Sada, whereby some of these monies, as we speak, are still not being paid. I mean, monies well in excess, run into hundreds of millions of Ghana cedis, and as we speak, per the government's own communication, only 14.5 million has been retrieved. You understand? So this is it's a huge problem. It's something that we need to deal with, especially when it comes to the area of the value for money of the projects that we're actually undertaking, whereby a few years back, a 3-classroom block cost 85,000 Ghana cedis. Now, as we speak, it's well in excess of 350,000 Ghana cedis. Right. So what it tells you is that we're not getting value for money some of the projects that we even undertake.
I see. So, Konabomfe, well, your colleague from the MPP here seems to be laying everything on the doorstep of government. Is that also your assessment of 2014 and how the government handled issues relating to corruption?
Well, thank you very much, and let me also say a very good morning to our cherished viewers and wish all of them a happy new year and admonish that 2015 should be a year that reminds us all of a duty to enter it with a renewed faith and strength to ensure that our goal at making Ghana a better place for us and the entire African and region and the world at large comes to a reality. We have the capacity to do it. All we need is the willingness and the commitment, governed by the drive to do it. Once we do that, I am sure this country can be better than what we are seeing today. We have all that it takes: human resource, material resource, everything. The good Lord has endowed us abundantly, and we cannot fail our God nor ourselves and future generations. The issue of corruption, my brother, it's something, it's a phenomenon that manifests itself in various forms and shapes. Of course, we have a better understanding of it when it comes to utilization of public resource. But corruption, in the real sense of the word, goes far beyond that. But we limiting ourselves to the concept or the area of public resource management and accountability. It cannot be entirely placed at the doorstep of one person or one institution per se. It's not possible. It can't happen that way. In the fight against corruption, nobody is entirely, if you like, excused. Neither is there anybody who would entirely be burdened with it alone. It is something that we need a collective, concerted effort to fight against. The first most important thing is identification of what is corrupt, or appreciation of what corruption is. Someone might engage in an activity without unknowing or appreciating that that deed is a corrupt practice. And also we need to why I want to insist on the need to appreciate it better is that there are tendencies within our traditional and cultural setup or systems that may in some jurisdiction be assumed or be read as corruption, but really not. For example, a thank you in the real sense of thank you for an effort or some assistance that someone might have extended to you. And I'll give a classical example. If you are a contractor, and I want to use a critical example for us to appreciate, in my sense, what in our cultural dispensation should not and cannot qualify for corruption in some sense. If you are a contractor, and I'm the head of a department that awards contracts, yes, you bid through the proper process. Among other competitors, you are shortlisted. Eventually, you are the award winner. You won on merit. But within our cultural setup, we expect that when somebody extends an assistance, and if you like, in this sense, a favor, because you were shortlisted out of a lot. You were picked out of even a shortlisted list or number. So in that sense, going back to say thank you to my brother, in a sense not paying him for what he did for you, but saying thank you, I don't see it as corrupt.
So you don't see that as corrupt? Don't you think that they have the tendency to actually corrupt future?
Let me conclude better. Now, how the thank you, that what form or shape it takes, is what must also be critically appreciated.
What should be the ideal? What should be the ideal form of a thank you package?
It's not. I didn't say package.
Okay.
Don't read
of a thank you. Of a thank you.
I'm saying to go and say thank you. You don't necessarily need to carry something.
So you just need to walk there and just say thank you.
Show appreciation. Thank you.
With a handshake.
There's nothing wrong with that.
With a handshake.
Or yes, with a handshake. Or even if it is that you are going to say thank you to that person with something other than financial money. Maybe, I mean, you come from the northern part of the country and you've gone to the boya, you've seen a well-woven smock. You buy one and come and say thank you to the person. I don't see that as corrupting the individual. And I want us to, distinguish some of these things. Of course, the culture of something we hear about 10%, 1%, that one is corruption. Because in that one, the motivation is that you are giving it to that person so that in future you will be given an undue advantage over other people. I see that one as something representative of corruption. And I want us to appreciate it in this sense. This is my view. Going forward, in terms of our country presently, there is nobody in public life who has not made commentary of corruption having become so widespread. We had the Chief Justice during the inauguration of new magistrates admonish them and warn them that it has gotten to the crescendo where it is almost as if nobody in public life can escape
Corruption.
The attack of corruption. We have all been labeled once you are in public life. We sit on TV today when people are talking about corrupt government officials. Because your face is on TV, you are counted as one of them. I had a strange politicians, not only politicians, people in public life with your faces on TV. And I'll tell you, I walked into a photocopying center very close to Registrar General's department here in Accra. And a young man knelt before me, begging me before Christmas that we should soften the economy and let them all. I was shocked.
Well, have you defected to the NDC?
It's not about whether you. Let me finish my narration.
Anyway.
I said, why? The guy had seen my face on TV and was assuming that I was a minister of state.
But why would he assume? Is it that you speak for government?
I'm saying he had seen my face on TV.
So just because he's seen your face on TV? Just because
he's seen my face on TV and I speak, his assumption is that I am a minister of state. It took another colleague of his standing by and said, but this is the man who has been helping all of us fight and insist that government should do the right thing. You don't know Kabila? Then the man said, oh, sorry, I thought he was a minister of state.
Oh, okay.
You understand?
I see.
I'm only telling you the effect of being in public life and having your face on TV and the mindset that people have of, people in that category or that kind of area of our public discourse. But at the end of the day, I believe that exposure or bringing issues of corrupt practices into public display is something that you can pat this government on the back for doing. Whether willingly or unwillingly or having been forced, issues on corruption have come in the fore. And we must pat one of your own, my own good friend Manasseh Azuri, say for the kind of zeal and enthusiasm with which he has been at the front line, and I'm sure he's been recognized.
Again, so I'll quickly chip this in. Some will say, so then why is there the need to pat government on the back? Because for about 50% or more of the cases that have been unraveled, corruption cases most of them were through the efforts of the media, particularly multimedia.
Yes, and I'm saying, I don't know on what basis that you are
so I'm just saying, so one would ask why the need to pat government, because unless of course those reports were out, those things we did came out, we would ordinarily still have sat down and thought everything was okay. I'm
saying, and I think that if you let me conclude the development of my argument, I'm saying on the issue of the issues, on the fact that the issues are in a public display, and we have heard statements from government persons and even to the effect that the National Service scandal was at the instance of the president having asked the BNI to undertake a covert operation, or if you like, an undercover operation. We can pat them. Okay. That's what I'm saying. We can pat them on the back for that. But it is not enough to say that the issues are being discussed in the public domain. What is the attitude at correcting the wrong which we are discussing in the public domain? That is where this government is lacking, and that is where this government is failing. For example, if you have a situation where it had to take some members of this government to go and tell the late President Mills to choose between them and Woyome before Woyome would get arrested, it is sad.
Was there any such instance?
Yes. That's what we are told. I'm saying it took some senior members of this government.
Which senior members?
I don't have to mention their names. They know.
No, but you see, it always becomes a problem when we cite instances and we don't.
Well, okay. So let me. You see, there was a long delay towards dealing with Woyome as a person by the state. It even took us a long time to eventually file a case against Woyome that he had defrauded the state. Don't forget the late Professor Mills, at the onset of this Woyome scandal, told the whole country when he was asked that he was not bothered about the beneficiary of that money, in that sense Woyome, but was worried and bothered about those who caused it. What did President Mills seek to say? What he was trying to say was that Woyome was legitimately paid. Today, officials and this government turns around to go to court to say that Woyome was not due that money and that the man defrauded the state. We are prosecuting him for that, true or false?
True.
Ahead of that, we have Mr. ABK Amidu, Martin Amidu, went to the Supreme Court challenging even the legality of the so-called contract that Woyome averred to, on the basis of which he went to make those claims. Initially, you know, the Supreme Court, restrained from commentary on it. Amidu went for a review. Eventually, the Supreme Court has made a pronouncement that the monies were wrongly paid. On the strength of that Supreme Court determination, something serious ought to have been done by this regime that is not being done.
Are you suggesting that attempts are not being made to?
I am not suggesting. I'm not seeing it.
Monies?
I am not part of government. How can I know about attempts?
So possibly it's being done.
I am not seeing it. If it is being done, we aren't seeing it.
No, but how are you supposed to see it? You probably have to seek the information from the authorities.
This is a matter of public. You see.
So when the payments are made, you expect them to publish them?
Nothing has been paid. What payments? But even aside that.
So point is, how do you know nothing has been paid? That's the question I'm asking, because obviously they wouldn't publish anyone's bank details or just say, oh, Woyome has paid so and so amounts of money. So we are publishing it in the dailies.
I will tell you what, that case is not just Woyome in isolation. It involves Isophoton and what have you. What we know today is that Isophoton is challenging government in court over that judgment.
So that means there's still a legal tussle. So then why do
Woyome is not. What have you? We are told that they are saying that government owes them some amount. The point I'm making is that we are not serious about it. If we were serious as a country, some initial action should have been undertaken. And I'll come more seriously about it with respect to those monies that have nothing to do with the law courts.
Okay.
The JIDA advances and the SADA advances that were made to Zoom Lion, RLG, and the Asontaba groups, and this even the 55 million. All we are told is that the whole of the year 2014, the amount of 55 million limited to be paid among 3 people or 3 companies, ACI, RLG, and then there's a third one. Out of the 55 million, they had paid 14.5 from January to December. We are in January. We are in January 2nd, 2015. Meanwhile, the arrangement was that they were to pay the 14.5 million per quarter. What happened?
I see. So maybe some quick clarification.
Meanwhile, some government still engages the services of Zoom Lion, for example.
Okay.
And government pays them. Or government is indebted to them.
So
couldn't we have, through some convenient arrangement, taking the money into government coffers or government chairs?
Okay, so what we are told by the executive director of JIDA, for instance, is that there is some...
Which of them?
Kobi Champo.
Yes.
We are told there's some form of reconciliation going on between the parties that owe government some money and and governments owing these other parties. Now, with specific emphasis on the monies that were advanced to some of these companies, we are told it's just one company, that's RLG, that were given an amount of 50 million Ghana cedis, interest-free loan, which they are repaying.
No.
That's what we are told. No, so maybe I just needed to bring that information to bear so that it will inform your
that cannot be true from Kobi Champo.
It's not true.
It cannot be true.
What's happened is that there were certain modules under JIDA, right, whereby there was youth in, I think, ICT, where they were meant to be taught how to repair micro tablets and phones and all that. The number of people that were meant to be trained, it never happened. There were another one with, I think it was dressmakers and artisans that Asotaba group was meant to do. It never happened. So all of these monies were actually paid directly to them, even before the service was going to be
So the
rendered.
understanding is that
now,
the particular money the AG is after is not those monies. It's on the interest-free loan.
No.
No.
There's two things. We're talking about two things. We're talking about Asuntaba being given a specific amount of money to undertake or do something to provide a certain service, train youth in all sort of these different models. That did not happen, right? And then we are talking about another issue of actually giving out interest-free loans to Asuntaba as well. Now, the point is that how do you, I mean, in this day and age, how do you give out an interest-free loan, for instance, to a company when you've actually contracted that company through one sole sourcing? And if you realize, when it comes to, I mean, I'm digressing a bit, when it comes to the issues with corruption with this particular government, you realize that the two particular companies, organizations, come to the fore all the time. There's a linkage between that and SADA, JIDA, SUBA. You understand? And all of these contracts were actually given out through sole sourcing. Of course,
probably they were the only ones who had the capacity to carry out these contracts.
Now, listen, in the sense that look at where we had issues with SADA about even tree planting, for instance, whereby a company that was literally just known for doing stuff in the IT section, mobile phones and all that, were actually giving contracts to, one, rear guinea fowl, two, to actually plant trees. You understand? And the emphasis is on the fact that these contracts were actually given out to them through sole sourcing. And you had all of these models under two companies, major companies. That's RLG and Zoom Lion. You understand? And the government has actually come out, and this is coming from government, that some of these monies were paid to them and the services were not provided. So these companies were basically meant to reimburse the money, but that has not happened. And my point is that in terms of even corporate governance, like normal, everyday corporate governance, how do you advance such amounts of money to an organization, interest-free loans, and then they do not even provide a service? Now, when it comes to RLG, for instance, we are told
under the New Patriotic Party at the time when it was NYEP, you also advanced interest-free loans to some of these companies.
Let me make my point. I mean, anytime
is that the case?
Anytime I'm in a discussion like this, and some of these things happen, it actually goes back to the point that I don't think that we are very serious when it comes to discourse.
But I just want to ask, I want us to establish this. Did the MPP at any point in time, when it was NYEP, advance interest-free loans to some of these companies?
I wouldn't know that. I'm not aware of that.
Okay.
But my point is that, even if that was the case,
even if it was the case.
Even if that was the case.
So let's assume it was the case.
Listen, even if that was the case, we are talking about a government that basically campaigned on the premise that it was going to deliver a better Ghana agenda to Ghanaians.
So they shouldn't have continued with your wrongs.
So that's my point. That's the very, logical sense in the way if we want to talk about these issues. Now, it did not happen. Now, if you look at the plethora of problems that we've had, even with our economy, whereby in terms of priority, government can find money. And that's extremely important when we're having some of these discussions. When government can find money, 50 million Ghana cedis, give it to one organization as an interest-free loan, and they'll come back and tell me that the reason why it cannot complete the Suhum and Sawam Road is because there's absolutely no dedicated funding for that project, and that the Kufuor government was undertaking the project on a GOG basis. You understand? It makes absolutely no sense to me. And that is the reason why many groups and many individuals, civil society organizations, have stated categorically that this particular government, right, is dabbling in a lot of corruption. This corruption that is going on today is actually state managed. And coming from the Supreme Court, whereby the Supreme Court Justice stated categorically that the government is basically undertaking a create, lose, and share system, whereby they go sit somewhere, conjure up some grant scheme, right, create it, and then loot and share. That's basically what it is. Because if you look at even the projects, the so-called projects that the government says that it has undertaken, based on how much money we've borrowed since the inception of, independence. Between 1957 and 2008, when the NDC came into power again, our debt was about $8 billion, right? Now, as we speak, between that period and now, we are standing at 27.3 billion.
Okay.
You understand? And our debt to GDP ratio is now hovering above 60.8%. Now, the government's own sort of audit as to what has been done with the money last time from its own communication team woefully fell short of what has been borrowed. It came up to, when they did the calculation, it came up to almost just about 4 billion. So the question that is being asked out there is that, where has all these monies gone to? And why are we still facing the problems that we are facing in our economy?
Okay, so then maybe we can assume and concur with what many people are saying, that the politicians have failed